Oh, he said you can actually pick up a live tell and a betting tell when, like at a $5 game, like at Commerce or something like that. When a couple people limp and then somebody raises kind of small, it's almost never. Five, no limit, $10 rock. What's the cap? What's the buy-in structure in this game?
So it's uncapped.
Okay.
But we're $2,000 effective with our villain here. We
Okay.
have him covered though. We have 2,500 behind.
Okay.
And it just so happens that the rock is in the big blind, so
Okay.
it basically just makes it like it's a $2,
210.
$10, but
It's like a 210.
It basically is playing like a 5-10 this game
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
So so we have under the gun and the low jack. They limp for the $10, which is kind of surprising. There's not a whole lot of limping in these games, but
Under the gun and
happens.
a low jack limp.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then our villain in the hijack, he opens up to 35.
A little bit small, right? Over 2 limps.
Yeah, it is small. I think that I kind of mentioned it whenever I sent the email to you. He'd been trying to like kind of cheaply take down these limps whenever he saw weakness. He had been doing that quite frequently, and I'd been picking up on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked down at ace of diamonds, six of diamonds on the button.
Okay.
And I decided to go ahead and 3-bet here to 135.
Well, okay, so 2 limps, 30. This guy, again, this is an old school sort of technique here too. That I always said, like, for some people that are just starting to get up in the stakes, and obviously this is not like low stakes, but I always said you can actually pick up a live tell and a betting tell when, like at a $5 game, like at Commerce or something like that. When a couple people limp and then somebody raises kind of small, it's almost never a strong hand.
Right.
It's almost like a juicer raise, and people just don't want to like raise it to like 2 to 3x over limpers with like jacks, queens, kings, and aces. They're just too scared of the bad beat. So sometimes this is a spot that you can take advantage of. So I don't hate it. How much was the 3-bet again?
135, so just under a pot size raise.
Okay.
So the limpers get out of the way and the villain calls.
All right, so hijack calls. So 270, 280, 290, maybe like 300, something like that.
Yeah, it's like 305 without the rake.
All right, so I'm going to put 300. Okay, so your heads up, 3-better, ace 6 of diamonds on the button.
Yes.
Okay.
So flop comes out 9 of diamonds, queen of clubs, 10 of diamonds.
9 of diamonds, queen of clubs, 10 of diamonds. You have ace 6 of diamonds here.
That is correct.
So you have the nut flush draw. Now, before you tell me what you are going to do, and this is this is one where it is a 3-bet pot, so it's a much sort of tighter configuration. But when you were on hold, if you heard the previous caller and I was talking about delayed double barreling, sometimes I can just look at this board sometimes and be like, well, you might actually have some checkbacks in a 3-bet pot in a given scenario like this because the board is sort of connected and hitting that range. And what you can sometimes do, you don't always have to auto bet in a spot like this with a nut flush draw. You can do delayed bluffs. And what I mean by that is sometimes it can go check, check, and then like the turn's a 3. And now you bet when check 2 on the turn, or you call a bet. Because what you're trying to do by betting is trying to get out a pair of 8s or below, which are going to check fold the turn anyways, right? And then everything else is just going to continue on the flop, right?
Yeah. And I very much considered a check back here, thinking kind of along those lines. But I also thought that I had a pretty decent range advantage. And, obviously I'm not worried about diamonds here, him having those. And I can have, the sets of 10s, the sets of queens. I guess he can have 10s and 9s.
Let me ask you, but I don't think that there's really much of a range advantage here in this spot, or really even necessarily a nut advantage specifically on this board between either one of you, because if he's not 4-betting queen, which maybe he's not because of the limpers, right, that have folded out,
right.
You all have 9s, queens, 10s, king, jack suited. And, maybe in terms of sort of an equity advantage, once in a while, he's got more hands like that he opens with queen 9 suited and calls, or 9-10 suited and calls, that you might not necessarily 3-bet. So I think it runs very, very close if you start to think about the hands that are played in this spot. I'm assuming
that's true.
I'm assuming hijack checks, right?
He does. Yeah,
Okay.
he checks.
Yeah.
And I go ahead and c-bet for 200. So right at like 2/3 pot.
Yeah, like I said, the hands that you're really trying to get to fold here, I mean, for 2/3, so any pair plus jack is obviously going to call. He doesn't really, I mean, I guess maybe like ace nine folds out for like two, not ace nine suited folds out for like 2/3. Of course, you have an ace. Well, it's but the nine is the diamond, so there's three ace nine combos. King 10 is pair plus straight draw. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to me that betting any larger is really going to necessarily get any more folds than what you're trying to do here on this board.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think looking back on it, I probably should have either bet small or checked back. I think you're right on that.
Yeah. So you bet 200. Okay.
I do, and he calls.
Okay. So call from the hijack, right? Hijack call. Sorry, I was just looking over at the. I was just looking over at the chat, and the chat does point out that without a 4-bet, yes, you've got more aces and more kings. So, but I'm talking about on this flop, which is a point that I washed over. So 200 in call, so 700 total, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right.
So the turn comes 7 of hearts.
So you pick up a bottom end of a gutter here to an 8 that would fill a jack, right? Queen 9, 10, 7. You got ace 6 of diamonds. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And villain checks to me again. And again, like it's kind of a weird spot, but like I said, I pick up equity. My line, I'm already, representing with my $200 bet on the flop that I've got a very strong hand, that I'm trying to defend against a draw heavy board. And so I go ahead and go just south of half pot. I go 300.
Let me ask you a question. Mm-hmm. What hands are folding to 300 that called 200 on the flop on this turn?
Maybe he's looking me up with like, well, I mean, I was thinking eights, but I mean, eights picks up the draw.
Well, I don't think you're going to get called by eights on the flop unless the guy's an idiot, right? But I just, here's the thing, like I would check this back probably all day, just the way that you set it up. I mean, I probably personally either would have bet really small on the flop or check back with the intention of doing that delay. But once you go 2/3, like the 7 doesn't change anything. It's a totally like lockdown board in the sense of when the turn comes a brick here. What are you? And he folded off a bunch of just nothing on the flop. Like, and now you're betting less than half pot. Like, what is folding here?
Yeah, maybe King 10, or Ace 10.
King 10,
something like that.
Gutter. King 10's got a gutter to a jack. Ace 10, true. Yeah, I mean, Ace 10 maybe 3 combos suited Ace 10, but that's very, very thin. The way that you play to this, I would check this back.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that now. I think I just kind of got in my head, I'll be honest, whenever I was in the moment, I was just like, I have a semi-bluffing hand that picked up a lot of equity on the turn. I'm going to build a big pot to where if I hit, I'm going to extract a lot of value, and if I miss, then it's going to be fairly easy to play in position. But yeah, I do think probably better to just check back here.
So, I mean, and the other thing too, I mean, yes, in general, right, when you pick up equity, it's good, that's one of the, that's one of the things to look at when we're structuring barrels, but it's not the only thing though.
Right. No,
you gotta look at board texture and stuff. So, okay, so you bet 300, we would have checked it back, me in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get a weird kind of check raise to 800.
So hijack check raises to 800, which is partially why I picked this hand, because we're going to get into some math stuff here, which I always think that people somewhat will underestimate, although the rest of this hand is pretty interesting as we talk through it here too. So let's talk about your outs, talk about what we think that the hijack have, talk about your pot odds, right? So you bet 3 in the 7th, 1,000. He makes it 800 total. So it's 18.5 to call, right? Right? Pot's 18,500 to call. So you're getting about 3.5 to 1 right now in pot odds. Now, the most likely holding, when you start to think about the amounts of combos of hands that somebody would have here, I think is a set, right? Set of queens, set of 10s, set of 9s, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you might have some king jack suited here too. But then again, there has to be some partials of a lot of these hands raising off. King jack probably being the one that's probably called as a slow play the most, because it blocks the scare cards from coming in, right? You have the nuts, you cooler somebody else with a lower jack, like You know, if you had ace jack, the turn was an 8, king jack coolers that, right? You know, there's less of a chance that a king or a jack comes because we have it in our hand. The ultra one being like king jack of diamonds followed by like king jack of clubs, something like that. So that's probably going to be a good portion of what is slow played. And then you'd think, well, our set's going to raise off here at some point, or two pair, things like that. So we have to keep in the back of our mind here that a jack definitely could be there, right? But maybe some, I don't know, maybe it's like 2-1. I mean, there's only 4 combos of king jack suited, and there's like, you know, 3, 6, 9 of set, so maybe it's about equal. So you're getting 3.5 to 1. Now, if you had, again, for the podcast people who are listening to this, because, you know, visualize it, you'll see the live stream link I'll put in Discord. Again, if you're a Crush Live Poker subscriber, I always put the unlisted live stream in Discord. You know, let's think about like a set here. So it's queen of diamonds, 9 of diamonds, queen of clubs, 10 of diamonds, 7 of hearts. So you've got 2 of the diamonds that wouldn't be good if they have a set, right? Because the board would pair. So that goes down from, say, like 9 to 7, right? But then you also have 3 outs to an offsuit 8. I don't want to double count the diamond. So that's 10 outs right there, right? So, you know, I'm just going to put here so we can visualize if set 10 outs. And then if he has king jack, then you just have 9 outs, right? You have 9 outs.
Nine clean outs to the nuts, yeah.
Right, 9 outs if king jack, 9 outs.
Well, eight, right? Because you can't have the 7 of diamonds. Sorry, no 7 of diamonds, no queen of diamonds.
Well, not if he has king jack, right?
Oh, we're right. Not if he has king jack.
Right. No, I mean, if he's got king jack, you get 9 outs. So this is what I talk about, like the 45 unseen card rule instead of doing like equities. And we can look at it like 40. It's actually 44 unseen cards here because I'm looking at a specific, as I'm writing here on the page, I'm looking at specific hands. If set, that means that our opponent has 2 cards, we have 2 cards, and we see 4. So that's 8 cards minus, 52 is 44. We can say 44 unseen cards here in this spot. So if set, you have 10 out of 44, which means that you have a 1 in 4.4 chance, which means you need 3.4 to 1. You're getting the direct odds now, right now. Okay. Now, if king jack, then I'm going to round it around to 45. I'll put 9 out of 44, but I think it's easy. 9 and 45 is 1 out of 5, 4 to 1, right? So you need 4 to 1. So you'd only need to make a little bit extra money here at the end. What I think that's interesting about this hand though, is that if an 8 comes in and he has a set, let's say he doesn't have king jack and you make the bottom end, I don't know. It's interesting because the draw on that side is kind of trashy in the sense that it's going to put a one-liner out there. So can you see somebody maybe check folding a set? However, to play devil's advocate with you, what I would do if I continue with your hand is that if the river's a jack and he checks, I'm going to fucking bluff for sure. Right.
But that's 100% what I was thinking too, is because,
the one liner there to the king. So I think that those kind of wash each other out. I would call here because you're getting remember, you're getting 3.5 to 1, right? 3.5 to 1. Right. You have another, let's see. So if you put in 800 here on the turn, 1,000, 11. So you've got another 1,400 afterwards, right? If you call. Right, in your stack, if you make this call,
right? Yeah, I'll have like another 1,400, and he's only going to have like 865 behind.
Oh, 865. I thought you said that it was 2,000. Okay,
yeah, so he's 2,000 effective.
My bad. Okay, so you get about 800 behind, right? But
that was like the main. Oh, go ahead.
But the pot, right? I mean, check raise to 800. The pot's going to be 2,300, so it's 1/3, and a lot of guys can't. A lot of guys, are going to pay off anyways. It's really close though, because we have to, again, we just said, well, is he going to fold if a jack comes? So you got to really, because in my head, I had it at 2,500. So I don't know if the jack comes, what kind of player this guy is, where he's going to get, fold out like a set of, say, 10s, getting 4 to 1 at the end, looking at that board for the extra 800. But I still think that this is almost a direct odds call. So whenever it's close, I make this call for sure.
Yeah, and I did make the call just thinking along the lines of he's only got 865 behind. If I do hit my card, I don't see any way that the money doesn't get in there. So I feel like I'm getting a lot more implied odds than the direct odds that I'm still getting.
Right, but
On the
again though,
turn.
because he's so shallow though, does that speak against the fact of bluffing if a jack comes in here at the
It
end?
does, but then isn't there something to be said about the four liner being out there,
Well,
especially
sure.
if his hands are mostly sets? I mean, I think that with the four liner being out there, people might even give that more credence than when the diamond comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think he's going to be thinking that I'm going to have the diamond draw all that often because it's a 3-bet pot.
Right.
So I think that the four liner like leans more towards if the jack does come, I think that I can still bluff here and get him off of it. Whereas when the diamond comes, I don't think he's going to give me as much credit, and I'm just going to get all the money.
Yeah. Again, like I said, if you bluff at it, he'll be getting 4-1 basically, right? 8-ish into
Right.
23. So what's the river?
So the river is a miracle card for us. It's the 3 of diamonds.
Okay.
And he just leads into me for the rest of the 865, and we just get the snap call.
So he just moves in.
Yeah, he just moves in for the rest of his stack, and it's probably the worst cooler. He has King Jack of diamonds.
Ah, I said that at the top, right?
Yeah,
like in the sense that if the primary nice hand, the primary sort of slow playing hand would be with the King Jack of diamonds. Let me throw this out at you, Taylor, here as I see this hand. What if the river was an 8 and he moved in?
Yeah, that'd be really, really tough, because I was sitting there thinking, what jacks can he have other than King Jack?
Well, no, it is King Jack, but here's the thing though, like we talked about, like if you're looking at a representation of what check raises on flop here, and we said, okay, well, maybe 9 sets and King Jack suited, but then we evened them out because I think we agree that a lot of the sets will fast play, King Jack probably not. So now let's say we're looking at even combos of King Jack and sets, which is why I put this up when we were doing the math out. If the river is an 8 and he moves in and you're getting 4-1, you don't expect him to move in with sets at the end, right? On Queen 9, 10, 7, 8, right?
Yeah, I don't think so.
So do you fold?
Not with the 4-liner out there. I think I do.
Yeah.
I just don't see what we beat. Like you said, there's not really much that we beat in that spot. But I also would be expecting him to, I don't know. I don't know what I would do. I'd have to think about that one.
Well, I think you fold the river if he moves in on an 8. I mean, the way that we broke it down, if the guy's range is half King Jacks and half sets and the river's an 8 and he moves in, I just don't see him doing that with the set. And it's one of these.
If that's the case,
it's
do
one
we
of
have to remove that from the math?
Well,
Like
I mean, we did remove it. I mean, we did remove it from the math because we said that King Jack, we only had 9 outs against King Jack. Remember?
Right.
We did remove it from the math. It's right
That's
here.
True. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, it's right here. But it's kind of interesting from your opponent's perspective because, of course, he doesn't know that you have a jack, and it's less likely that you have a jack when he holds one. But it's always interesting in a spot where if your opponent checks, you will bet. Mm-hmm. This is the definition of a value own, right? If your opponent checks, you will bet with a worse hand for value that you would otherwise hold if he bet himself. And that's exactly what we have here. If the river is an 8 and he bets and you fold, whereas if he checks, you would bet. But it's really hard for your opponent to know that that's obviously going to happen. I mean, you could just be looking at like a, catching, against a bluff or something like that. So if the queen of diamonds comes, you lose too, by the way.
Right.
Straight flush.
And then from his perspective, if the 8 comes and it does bring the 4-liner in, and he checks his set, like maybe he has like a set of 10s here, and I move all in. I mean, is that just a fold for him?
What was that again? I'm sorry.
Like, so if the 8 does river off, right? And let's say our opponent, instead of having King Jack, he has like set of 10s.
Mm-hmm.
And so we move all in on like maybe the offsuit 8, like the 8 of clubs.
Right.
Does villain call off in that spot?
I mean, that's why I said it was a trashy draw when I was explaining this back in the beginning, because it's going to put a lot of one-liners. I think you might get called because I don't think that he is going to... I think the jack on the river would look more scary than the 8, to be perfectly honest with you, right? Like, I think that he might call off there getting 4-1 if an 8 comes, which puts a one-liner to a jack, whereas you get more credence on a jack. But even still, you're still getting the right direct pot odds against the set. I mean, you're getting 3.5 to 1, right?
Right.
So thanks for the call. I like going over that math. I would definitely call. I can't see how you don't call on the turn here. I don't even think it's close for some of those people who are saying that.